This evening it is December 19th, and I made a post a little bit earlier in the afternoon, which was going over what Judge Gerald Warren did in suspending my driver's license unlawfully. And what I found was done to help conceal his crime is when I was looking at the FBI records and the driver report that they brought up. The DMV report makes it appear as though my license was suspended, but it only makes mention of the lawful suspension. It doesn't say anything about an illegal suspension for no reason. It just basically mentions that there is a suspension and it appears to be legal. And what happened is, as I was saying, the first suspension was illegal, and then the law changed and they decided to just leave it the entire time that it was illegally suspended, and then have it included into when it was lawful to suspend a license for unpaid tickets. And something that I noticed, anyway, so that, I guess to cover that to start with would be where I would begin. When I was then stuck in Washington State and unable, to go to college, I was trying to contact the FBI at that point, and I was having one migraine after another triggered, and I was suddenly being called drug seeking. And it was the first time in my entire life that I'd had any medical facility call me drug seeking. I just had never in my life had anyone accused me of, what do they call it? Not drug dependency, not drug seeking. Maybe it's just drug seeking. I don't know. When someone goes in and asks for prescription drugs just because they want to get a high on prescription drugs, I guess. And never in my life had anybody accused me of that. And all of a sudden, I had these doctors accusing me of refusing to treat very severe migraine and accusing me of being drug seeking. This is the first time that I felt that the FBI was behind something like that. Because what had changed in the last several years, where nobody ever accused me of being drug seeking, to my giving a report of sex abuse and break and entry to the FBI, and all of a sudden I'm being called drug seeking by doctors, and I was being harassed by police. So that was the first time that I started to think that this might have something to do with FBI, because the only person prior to these Washington doctors who had ever said anything to me about or accused me of illegal drug use or made any kind of suggestion in any way about that was Julia Thornton, the woman that I gave my report to, who was working for the FBI. And what she had said is, when I was giving my report about, this keeps falling, sort of, it's tipping down here, what she kept, I I had brought up the fact that Armando Garza asked if I had any reefer. And then the first thing that she said is, and then I told her that I'd taken a couple of my prescription painkillers because of a severe migraine in the presence. And then she spoke up and said, your use of prescription painkillers could preclude you from employment with the FBI. That's almost verbatim what she said to me. She cut me off from it saying anything about the marijuana question by one of the agents. And then she started pointing a finger at me as if, and I said to her, I said, my migraines, I said, I've had prescription painkillers for migraines that are severe. It's medical. And come to find out all this time, I didn't even have migraines. I mean, this is the shocking thing. My migraines were triggered by the federal government. So basically, my need to even have painkillers at all was not even my fault. I mean, it's no one's fault to have migraines or to have pain of any kind. I mean, if you have legitimate pain, that's not anybody's fault. I mean, obviously. But I was having excruciating, debilitating migraines, and come to find out, it had nothing to do with my body chemistry or accident or injury or even genetic background. Nobody in my family had migraines. We had no history of migraine headaches. And after all this time, I later find out that these migraines are being triggered by NASA and the military. And they're doing this whenever they want to. I mean, this is just like an incredible, horrific discovery to make, that your life is being turned upside down by someone assaulting you from your own government. And not only assaulting you, but driving you deliberately to need narcotic painkillers. There was absolutely no painkiller that could even touch the level of pain that I was in. It was extremely severe. When I had these migraines, I was not able to do, I literally was spending hours, 3 days at a time, doing things like getting up in the middle of the night, putting my feet in scalding hot water, hoping I could redirect the blood flow from my head to my feet. Trying everything possible. Getting peppermint and lavender essential oils, the very strong ones, and dumping several drops of this very strong stuff into the bath water, just so I wouldn't feel quite as nauseous while I was scalding my feet, and in total pitch blackness, in pitch darkness, because the light hurt my eyes. Getting a rock out of the garden so that I could hold a rock in my hand and press it against the base of my skull and to the area that these migraines were being triggered to try to cut off this blood circulation or the inflammation that suddenly expanded when I was being assaulted by military technology. And it always happened over one eye, but it was an assault. It was done on, probably just done on one side of my head, and initially, what was their motive for triggering these migraines? The only time that they were triggered was when I worked for the Del Balzos initially to see, I guess, if it worked. And then after that, they were triggered while I was at work at CTR Business Systems, which kept me from which basically forced me to quote-unquote share a job with someone else who could be my quote-unquote backup in case I had a migraine. And all this time, that was never even necessary. I was going home looking on Fridays or Mondays looking like I wanted a 3-day weekend, when come to find out it wasn't even something that should have been part of my history at all. It should have never affected my work. The next time that I was just assaulted, I think out of retaliation and punishment, is when I went to the doctors, and I hadn't reported it to the police, but I reported to a doctor that I'd been raped because I wanted to be tested for STDs. And after that, I had 15 of these migraines triggered in 1 month. And it was also when I was first trying to go back to college full time. And I knew Krista Schneider at that time, and I was beginning to have some problems with the Mount Angel Abbey people, and all of a sudden I was assaulted to the point of I didn't know how I was going to make it through college or life. I thought I had no idea what had just suddenly hit me, because I had had 1 or 2 here or there, that kept me out of work, and all of a sudden 15 in a month, that had nothing to do with a strange menstrual cycle. And it didn't have anything to do with stress, because I've had other periods of stress that were much worse. It was more like retaliation and trying to keep me out of college. And then the next time that I realized that these triggered migraines were deliberately used to assault me and keep me out of an anti-competitive nature, is when I had my lawsuits, and I was trying to clear my name, and I had to do that through these lawsuits that I was forced to file. And I was prevented from continuing with these lawsuits by obstruction of my travel, an illegal obstruction of my travel, and by military government-triggered migraines on the dates of the hearings specifically. So, once or twice it looks like not too big of a deal. After many times, it starts to look like you're making excuses. And, it started to make me look like I was making excuses. Why would I suddenly have a migraine on the day or the day before of the hearing? So it starts to look like I'm making excuses, when actually I'm being assaulted on the day of the hearing or the night before the day of the hearing. So then when I was trapped in Washington State, I think to keep me from getting back into college and correcting things and being able to appeal the court thing, and because I was still trying to get a hold of these records that were in Marion County, all of a sudden I was assaulted, the worst that I'd been assaulted since I had the 15 migraines in a month. I started having them almost every day, and this is after someone had already pretty much confirmed that the hospitals there were not going to be treating my migraines. So then they just 2-3 migraines a week. Horrible migraines. I was going to the emergency room. I had no idea that while they were calling me drug seeking, I didn't realize it, but I guess in law enforcement circles they can do something called red flag you. And I guess being red flagged, I think that's what it's called, red flagged. I think being red flagged means law enforcement has contacted medical people to suggest that you might have a drug problem. And I don't know where police would get that idea unless it was from the FBI, because the only group that had ever accused me or even brought anything up like that was Julia Thornton when she was trying to defend her agents. And so I'm not sure if maybe a medical person first brought it up and said something to the police, so then the police said this to all of the medical personnel, or if it was FBI, because like I said, I had never been accused of such a thing until after I met with the FBI to report misconduct.